Ahead on the 30-minute news, residents of the Pine Bush suffer defeat tonight before the Albany Common Council. Walter Mondale predicts a victory in tomorrow's balloting despite the polls. And President Reagan urges his supporters not to get overconfident while his staff talks of a sweep.
Also ahead tonight, teachers in East Greenbush picket in support of a new contract. And our one-minute house call tonight is about cures for growing pains. All that and more just ahead on the 30-minute news.
WNYT, Albany, New York.
And now, from WNYT, Nancy Cozean, Vic Vetters, meteorologist Herb Stevens, and Bob McNamara with the sports. This is the 30-minute news.
A development project is approved for the Pine Bush. Good evening. I'm Vic Vetters.
And I'm Nancy Cozean. Tonight, the Albany Common Council voted to let 5 new properties go up. John Alston reports some Pine Bush residents are outraged.
For the dozens of Pine Bush residents who packed the Albany Common Council, it was the worst possible news.
11 spineless aldermen just turn their backs on what the Pine Bush is about, and they turn their backs on a future treasure of the city.
The council voted 11-4 to rezone about 30 acres of land off the Madison Avenue extension. It will allow developer Willard Anderson to build 5 two-story buildings. Pine Bush Alderman Nicholas Coluccio voted in favor of the development, which made residents even more angry.
He told us that he would vote to defeat any zoning change to commercial in that entire area.
I didn't promise. I said I would look into it and I would try to stand in fight on their behalf. But once all the facts were handed to me, then I had to make a decision.
Despite the intense feelings, both sides did agree on one thing, that this is an issue of importance to all of Albany, not just to residents of the Pine Bush. Those in favor of the development say it will generate $250,000 in tax money for the entire city. Not so, says Alderman Gerald Jennings, who spent more than a half hour trying to convince his fellow lawmakers the Pine Bush is being developed too fast.
I am very upset with my fellow council members.
Developer Anderson did not show up at the meeting and could not be reached for a comment. Alderman Coluccio says the developer does have tenants lined up for the buildings. John Alston, the 30-minute news, Albany.
Also at tonight's meeting, aldermen voted to ban the use of plastic pipes in Albany buildings.
More than 150 teachers in the East Greenbush school system are up in arms tonight. They've set up informational picket lines outside the Edmond Genet School, and they say they will stay put until their union president tells them to go home. Union representatives and an attorney for the school board are meeting with a mediator inside the school. The teachers have been without a contract since classes began in September. If no settlement is reached tonight, the dispute could go to fact-finding. Some big bucks were spent in the last hours of the presidential campaign. Tonight, President Reagan and Walter Mondale bought time on the 3 networks. Earlier, both men also wrapped up their campaigns with stops in California. Here are 2 reports. First, a look at Mondale's day.
Walter Mondale hopes that California will be the centerpiece of a come-from-behind upset tomorrow, and that's why he began his final campaign day with a mass rally in downtown Los Angeles. Addressing a crowd studded with celebrities, Mondale said the voters can help make history when they go to the polls.
Tomorrow we can prove that the pollsters are wrong. We can prove that polls don't vote, people vote in this country. Tomorrow, we can prove that this country does not belong to the slick magazines who picked your president for you. This country belongs to you, and you're taking it back in your hands.
California is considered so important for the Democrats that the Mondale campaign even has outspent the Reagan campaign here. But even so, it still seems unlikely that Mondale will be able to overtake the president's home state lead. Mondale, meanwhile, flew on to Iowa for yet another rally, and then to Minnesota for a final home state appearance. Dan Blackburn, NBC News, with the Mondale campaign in Los Angeles.
Ronald Reagan opened the last day of his final presidential campaign at the state capitol, where he sat 8 years as governor. It's the first time he's been to Sacramento since becoming president.
It sure feels great to be home.
He joined entertainer Frank Sinatra on stage for the first of 3 rallies and kept up his attack on opponent Walter Mondale.
His economic program has 2 parts. First, raise your taxes. Second, do it again. But I've got news for him. The American people don't want his tax increases, and they're not going to get his tax increases.
His political strategists are predicting a landslide for President Reagan, perhaps as many as 49 states. That makes him concerned about voter complacency.
If I could just, one word of caution. Don't pay any attention to the polls. I looked up at Mount Rushmore and President Dewey's face isn't there.
David Rush, NBC News, with the Reagan campaign in Sacramento.
Meanwhile, both candidates are saying they'll come out the winner tomorrow. This despite the fact that the polls say Mr. Reagan will win. But Mondale says those polls are dead wrong, and he says he'll stage the biggest upset since the Truman victory in 1948. In 1948, a landslide was predicted. A sure win for New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey, the pollster said, 3 weeks before the voters decided. The landslide came, but it was incumbent Harry Truman who would ride back to the White House on a big electoral and popular vote. Well, what are the chances of a Truman-like upset in the polls in 1984? Here at the Marist Institute for Public Opinion, polling is their business. They'll be polling right up to Election Day. But even though polls are more timely and have better instruments now, they are still not perfect.
Polls are really never predictors, but merely snapshots of an electorate at the time the poll's taken.
And Lee Marengoff, director of the Institute, says it's a long shot, but Mondale could still stage an upset if he pulls 270 electoral votes.
Then we would see a turnout in the major industrial states, New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, and what have you, those major states, a turnout which would bring large numbers of urban voters to the polls. We've had enormous numbers of new registered voters, and there's some sense as to whether Democrats or Republicans, but in certain key states, the major industrial states, we're not sure how many are minority and therefore likely to be Democratic voters.
Tuesday will be the day that will tell that. Marengoff says tomorrow's election in New York is still up a toss.
And ahead on the 30-minute news, terrorist arrested in Cleveland may have local ties.
The 30-minute news is brought to you in part by Blue Cross of Northeastern New York, the one you trust the most.
5 radicals wanted for murder and bank robbery were arraigned in Cleveland today. The gang may have conducted robberies and terrorist bombings here in the Capital District, including the bombing of the Eastern Rugby Union in Schenectady back in September of '81. Also the robbery of a Rotterdam branch of Marine Midland in July of '83. One of the suspects arrested is Raymond Luc Levasseur. He's one of the FBI's 10 most wanted criminals.
Vermont knitters won a major victory in Washington today. The Labor Department lifted its ban, stopping firms from buying sweaters and hats made by home knitters. The new rule takes effect in 30 days. It allows makers of outerwear to employ knitters so long as the employer gets a government certificate. For the first time in almost 2 years, the U.S. auto industry has posted a monthly sales drop. The October decline wasn't a very big one, just 0.03%. The decrease is due mainly to the GM strike in Canada. Even so, it's a year of record profits for Detroit. The domestic auto industry has now surpassed the number of cars sold in all of 1983. Vic?
Nancy, the people who live in Albany may be in for a tax hike next year. Today, Mayor Thomas Whalen presented his budget plan for '85. It calls for a 4.5% jump in property taxes. It's a $75 million package which gives city workers a 6% pay raise. The mayor also in the fiscal year on January 1st.
You'll be paying less for a jar of peanut butter this year thanks to a record harvest of the nuts. The state of Georgia produces half the nation's peanuts, and because they have a good supply, prices will be coming down. The 2-month harvest is just ending, and food companies are cutting prices on last year's stock to make room in warehouses for this year's nuts. Vegetable prices will also be coming down this winter. You can plan on spending the same or a little less on all your vegetables except lettuce. Higher demand is causing a rise in lettuce prices. And citrus lovers, take note. Orange and grapefruit prices are on their way up. This is partly because last year's deep freeze wiped out production in Texas for this year.
And just ahead, Herb has the Election Day forecast.
We're also going to take a look at some possible cures for growing pains. Stay with us. After a hard day on the playground, lots of kids are full of aches and pains, and you might think they just overdid it. But in fact, it may be the physical condition we know commonly as growing pains. What they are and how to treat them is Chris Kapostasy's topic on tonight's 1 Minute House Call.
Growing pains are more than a figure of speech. They're a common problem for kids ages 3 to 5 and 8 to 12. It happens when the muscles and tendons grow at a different rate than the bone, and the pain usually starts after lots of exercise.
As they sit down and become less active, they have some swelling of the muscle and tendon groups, and these occur in rather characteristic positions about the leg, between the knee and the ankle, and on the outer aspect of the leg.
Lower back is another problem area. Both back and legs usually feel a dull, continuous ache.
They can usually be treated with a gentle massage to the involved area, or a warm tub bath, or aspirin.
Growing pains should go away in an hour or so. If not, it might then be time to see the doctor. Chris Kapostasy, the 30-Minute News.
Now, St. Peter's Hospital has helped us put together not only the series, but a booklet summarizing 35 health tip segments. You can have it free by sending a self-addressed stamped envelope to 1 Minute House Call, P.O. Box 4035, Albany 12204. Please send a legal-sized envelope. Tomorrow on the 1 Minute House Call, problems caused by dry winter air and what to do about them. As a matter of fact, we might get a sampling of dry winter air sooner than you think. Let's go to the Weather Center with Herb Stevens.
We certainly didn't have it today. It was wet most of the day. We had more than 3/4 of an inch of rain, but drier air is on the way. And by this time tomorrow, it is going to be very dry. It's also going to be quite cold. Right now, though, in the Capital District, it's still a little bit damp. We have mostly cloudy skies. The temperature is down to 48 degrees, but you notice that the dew point is 43, and when those numbers are close together, that indicates that the atmosphere is close to being saturated, and it's still quite damp, as I mentioned. The barometer right now, falling to 9.76. The wind at 8 miles per hour, and that westerly wind direction suggests that drier air is on its way. The high today, 56, the low, 48. And notice that we had 77/100ths of an inch of rain at the Albany County Airport. Now, at 11 p.m., temperatures haven't cooled off all that much from 6 p.m., just a few degrees because of the persistence of the cloud cover. It's down to 42 in Glens Falls. Also at Watertown, I suspect it's a little cooler at Messina, but they haven't reported in for a couple of hours. I guess they have a pinochle game going up there. 63 degrees in New York City, still mild there. We have a few showers on the map, one at Bradford, Pennsylvania, 39 degrees, and there are other very light showers in far western New York. There's been a little bit of light rain at Rochester and Syracuse in the form of showers during the evening, but nothing really to speak of. And we're in a pattern right now of slow improvement. You'll see it by the end of the day tomorrow. The 5 p.m. satellite picture showed plenty of cloudiness over the northeast, but notice as we go to 10 p.m. that we start to develop a few holes in the overcast over New England, over southwestern Ontario, another one here in western Pennsylvania, and gradually this cloud mass is going to break up overnight. But once the heating of the sun sets in tomorrow, because the air is so cold aloft, unstable, we're going to have a pretty good deck of those low clouds again during the day tomorrow, and they're even going to produce a few snow flurries in the hills around here. Plenty of clear skies in the nation's midsection, pretty good storm again in the northwest, excuse me, but in the eastern half of the country, the problem are those low clouds. You see the darker shade of gray indicating the clouds are down close to the surface of the earth. Skywatch radar not too busy, but you can see the showers in western New York and also in western Pennsylvania, and the rain over my shoulder over on the west coast. The jet stream, this particular trough is a little further to the east. This is the way the jet stream looked this morning. So now this northwesterly flow that was in the western Great Lakes has slid further to the east, and tomorrow it'll be right over us. So we're going to see a cooling trend over the next 2 days or so. By Wednesday morning, it's going to be pretty cold, as a matter of fact. The national map shows a low-pressure center in Maine. This is the one that raced along the eastern seaboard today, brought us the rain last night that ended slowly during the course of the day. A second cool front that has passed through in the last couple of hours. We have a westerly wind. Things are drying out. But here's that cold, unstable air. It's going to be reinforced somewhat during the course of the day tomorrow with another cold front. So we're going to have quite a bit of cloudiness tomorrow, some sunshine, but by Wednesday, high pressure is going to ease all of the moisture out to sea. We're going to have some very nice weather. Next set of showers not until the end of the week. So here are the details of the forecast. Overnight, considerable cloudiness. You will see some moonlight from time to time, and the full moon's coming up on Thursday. Stray sprinkles. It's not cold enough to snow yet. Breezy and cooler, 38 to 43. During the day tomorrow, a mixture of clouds and sun for that stroll to the polls. Sprinkles and flurries. The flurries will be found in the hills, and it's going to be breezy and chilly, only in the 40s. Tomorrow night, well, the clouds get out of here, and we are going to have a cold night. Temperatures down in the 20s. We'll have a cold start on Wednesday, but the rest of the day on Wednesday should be pretty nice with bright sunshine. I expect a lot of sunshine on Thursday as well, but by Thursday night, I think clouds and showers are coming back, and they're likely to continue into Friday. How about the 13 snow game? We had it last year. It was very popular. Second edition. We need to know when you think 6 inches of snow will accumulate at the Albany County Airport. We'd like you to put that guess, the date and the time on a postcard. Send it to this address, P.O. Box 4035, Albany 12204. One card only. Send it in by November 30th. And if you are the lucky person to guess the time and the date of that first 6-inch snowfall, we'll send you and a friend to Stratton Mountain, Vermont for a weekend. 2 nights with lifts, lodging, lessons. Whether or not you get the lodging of your choice, it's dependent upon the availability up there. And if you're going to Stratton Mountain, you have to have skis. So we'll give you 2 pair of skis, bindings, and poles, courtesy of the folks at Phoenix Ski Shop. You'll have a great time. The package is worth $1,300. Get the cards in and get out to the polls tomorrow. Vic?
Righty, thanks a lot, Herb. If you've been shopping recently, you know that Christmas is in the air, and with Christmas comes Santa Claus. And when Santa shows up, kids all want to see him, but a researcher at Cornell says children shouldn't meet with St. Nick too early. Children have a different sense of time than adults. To them, 6 weeks of waiting could seem like an eternity. Corporations are giving more money to charities than ever before. Donations in '83 rose to an estimated $3 billion, up 7% from 1982. Almost 40% of the money went to education, the rest going to community improvement, health and human services, and the arts. And a book is out that tells us what's going to be in '85. The American Forecaster 1985 predicts ponytails, White Sox, and the game of squash will be with us. But get ready to say goodbye to Cabbage Patch dolls, suntans, and granola bars.
Love granola bars, too.
News sooner or later we come back into fashion. Coming up in sports, John McEnroe is in trouble again. Mac will have the story in just a minute.
First, a look at today's winning lottery numbers. Good luck.
Tennis's bad boy, John McEnroe, is out of line again, right, Mac?
For all of his talent, Vic, he has a terrific affinity for making a fool out of himself. Plain and simple. He went absolutely berserk yesterday during a match in the Scandinavian Championships in Stockholm.
Right on the line. No mistakes so far in this match, right? You haven't overruled anything. No mistakes whatsoever. Answer my question! The question, jerk!
And that was only the half of it. He ripped the ball into the stands, and then he went over and started smashing his racket into the water cooler, and the drinks went flying that were on top of it. Now tonight they've suspended him for 42 days. This on top of fines totaling $2,100. Despite all of that, though, McEnroe won the tournament tonight with a 3-set victory over Mats Wilander to become the first player ever to take the tournament 3 times. John McEnroe is mercurial a person as I guess we'll ever see. Well, the NFL was thrown for a loss today by the U.S. Supreme Court when it stripped the league of its power to block future franchise moves. The court said, in effect, that the NFL had been violating federal antitrust laws. And this, of course, a great victory for Al Davis and his L.A. Raiders. And John McKay resigned today as head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, effective at the end of this season. McKay is the only coach the Buccaneers have ever had. He'll now become president of the club. Well, in baseball, Keith Lippman's star continues to rise. This past season, he led the Albany A's to the Eastern League Championship, and as a result, was named Manager of the Year. Well, today, the Oakland A's gave him a raise and named him manager of their #1 farm club at Tacoma. Good manager, Keith Lippman. I'll be surprised if one day he isn't managing the A's. Well, Union College is 1 win away from a perfect regular season record, a record that would move the Dutchmen a step closer to the Lambert Bowl as the top small college football team in the East. Mark Cooper reports as the Dutchmen prep for their regular season finale.
The Dutchmen are 8-0 following Saturday's 38-0 romp over Middlebury. They'll face Hamilton on the road this Saturday. Coach Al Bagnola can't overstate the importance of this final game.
It's going to take 9 victories to get into the playoffs. If you lose one this year, I would realistically say we're out. And the kids know that, and they're going to treat this like a playoff game. It is. If we win, we keep playing. If we don't, we start recruiting.
Union's stingy defense will be put to the test by Hamilton quarterback Seamus Karate of Troy.
Their quarterback threw for 490 yards in one game. That's unbelievable. We have that film, and he looks outstanding, as good as any Division III quarterback I've ever seen. Now, hopefully he won't be that hot against us, but they're very talented. It should be a good game.
Bagnoli says they're down to a one-game season. The playoffs may be in sight, but Hamilton will certainly be out to spoil the Dutchman's view. Mark Cooper, 13 Sports Tonight, Schenectady.
In Major College Ball, the Associated Press Top 10 is out tonight, and for the fourth week in a row, the Huskies of Washington are the #1 team in the country. Texas holds in second, with Nebraska climbing to third ahead of BYU. North Carolina holds firm in 5th place. Here's the second five. Miami, Oklahoma State continuing to move up, Georgia, Oklahoma, and finally Florida State. Well, it turns out tonight that Chicago Bears' win over Oakland yesterday was very, very costly, or I should say Los Angeles. They have lost quarterback Jim McMahon for at least a month. McMahon has a lacerated kidney, so the new man will be backup quarterback Steve Fuller. In the NFL tonight, Washington beating Atlanta. They've just scored. It's 20-14, and it is late in the game. In the NBA tonight, Isaiah Thomas again, 33 points, and I don't know how many assists. The Pistons knocked over Cleveland, the final 107-98. And the Union soccer team today accepted a bid to the NCAA tournament. They'll begin play Wednesday at home against a very tough Fredonia team. So that one should be interesting.
Is there anything they can do about McEnroe?
I don't know, but I'll tell you. He goes over and he wins this tournament. And he gives the United States a black eye. This is over in Sweden. And there's a lot of people interested in this. And it's on national television in Sweden. In fact, it's all over that part of Europe. And he goes out and he makes a fool out of himself, and people say, look at the American, look at the American. It's no good.
Well, we're out of time, Mac. When we come back, we'll take a sentimental journey down the campaign trail. Pope John Paul is the most widely traveled Roman Catholic leader in history. The Vatican's reason for this is it's important for people to know the Pope participates in their suffering. He is currently on a trip through northern Italy. The New Yorker magazine has 2 new editors. 39-year-old John Bennett has been named managing editor for nonfiction, and 37-year-old Charles McGrath is now the managing editor for fiction. The 2 may eventually become co-editors of the magazine. Bob Hope will be leading the entertainment at the National Conservative Political Action Committee Election Night Party. NITPAC hopes to raise $500,000 at the event. Some of the guests, Fred McMurray, Lee Majors, and Phyllis Diller.
It has been a long, hard road for the men and women involved in the presidential campaign. Electing a president is serious business, but it also has its humorous side, as we see in this report.
On the last day of campaigning all through the land, candidates speechified, waved, grabbed one last hand. Almost gone now, the dread of that one fatal slip of the kind that could wind up sinking the ship. Like the Labor Day parade, when too few Democrats showed. Or Mr. Reagan on spies, but not talking in code.
Over to the agency head of the CIA in Nicaragua.
And Jerry Ferraro, tired and drawn, forgot for the moment which side she is on.
Tell them to pull that lever for Walter. Wait.
Mrs. Bush really meant to say which, she told reporters en masse, while George said what he meant to about kicking, alas. Campaign 84 seems like it's gone on for years. At last, Tuesday, the voting, then to the victors, the cheers. Then maybe a normal life, a blessed respite, a break, while somewhere, someone starts planning Campaign 88. Don Porter, NBC News, Washington.
We'll have all the latest election returns right here on Channel 13. That's our 11 o'clock report. I'm Nancy Cozean.
And I'm Vic Vetters. Stay tuned now for a special report from NBC News on tomorrow's election, and we encourage you to vote.